18th voting meeting of the Exeter Township Board of School Directors. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed and recorded. A copy of this meeting will be made available along with highlights from tonight's meeting and answers to any questions that may arise. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Fike, if you could now take a roll call.
Allison Wilson.
Here.
Hunter Ahrens.
He will not be present this evening.
John Fiddler.
Here.
Dr. Ann Herring.
Here.
Dr. David Hemberger.
Here.
Michael Chapina. Here. Anthony Chowdhury.
Here.
Harry Miller.
Here.
Michelle Stratton.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Fike. In addition to the 8 board members in attendance this evening, we are also joined at the board table by our solicitor, Sharon Montaigne, and members of the school district administration, including Dr. Kimberly Miner, superintendent, Dr. Eric Flam, director of teaching and learning, Mrs. Dawn Harris, director of pupil services, and Dr. Christy Haller, director of human resources, and Mr. Brian Fike, who serves as our director of finance and support services, as well as our board secretary. We do not have any amendments to make this evening to our agenda. So we will move on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Miner.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I want to share some exciting news that I just heard from Mr. Lagath, our athletic director, that our boys cross country team has won the county title this evening for the first time in 31 years. So congratulations to our boys cross country team. Also, I know Ms. Herring will be sharing other exciting athletic news, including that both our boys and girls soccer team for the first time ever have both made it into the championship. So it's been an exciting year for Exeter athletics already. And I know Ms. Herring has, or Dr. Herring, excuse me, has more details on that. I also want to share that Dr. Hemberger and I were participants in the PSBA Advocacy Day this week, and I want to thank Representative Gillen and Razi for meeting with us and engaging us in conversation about concerns related to the district, as well as to Senator Judy Schwenk, who wasn't able to be present, but one of her staffers was present, and to Dr. Hemberger. That was a day that we devoted, but I think it was to talk about really important issues, and we really do appreciate our representatives and senators taking an interest in the schools. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you. We will be following board policy number 903 regarding public participation in board meetings. This policy was adopted on March 31st, 2020. I will not be reading this policy this evening. However, please be aware that if you do not comply with our policy, we will unfortunately have to ask you to leave. I'm surmising that a number of individuals in the audience this evening are here to talk about the district filling the kindergarten position at the Lorraine Elementary School, as well as the transfer of a kindergarten teacher at the Lorraine Elementary School, Mary Firestone, to another facility in the district. While we recognize your right to comment on district actions, the board and the district administration will not be specifically addressing its rationale or basis for making these determinations, as they are confidential personnel issues. As a matter of full disclosure, Ms. Firestone is ably represented by the Exeter Township Education Association, which is addressing these issues with the district administration. Accordingly, this is to advise you, we will certainly politely listen to your comments within the strictures of our comment period, but we will not be addressing any of these concerns publicly, as they are private personnel issues. Thank you. Okay. First up, I have Miss Christine Blair.
good evening. I'm coming to you today as a parent of a student of Exeter Township Senior High School. The students are also extremely upset at the matter at which you just said you were not going to address. It is not just one particular teacher to heart, but many teachers within the district that are receiving this angst. Her letter states, as a student of Exeter Township, this school district, I'm very upset to find out what is happening to some of my favorite teachers and in the district. One of my most magical, kind-hearted, and sincere teachers I ever had is to be pushed out of the district or put on leave. This is a travesty. This teacher and so many others in the district have made a huge impact on my life. One that was meant to feel insignificant by these teachers was meant to feel like they have meaning. These teachers have inspired me to want to become a teacher. I want to be able to be there for kids like they were for me. When I started in kindergarten, I was scared and discouraged. Now as a high school senior, I believe in myself and put myself out there. I give my credit to my parents and to the teachers for shaping me to the person I am today. Her closing words are, Exeter, we need to open our eyes and see what's happening. We are about to lose some of the best, most caring teachers and mentors we've ever had. We need to change before we lose more and the district falls apart. That's the letter from the senior. We as parents also can no longer sit idly by as our district is being dismantled, which is how most of us feel. Some of the teachers have been in place for 15 to 22 years. Teachers that do generally care about the children and in middle school and in kindergarten. Kindergarten is a terrific milestone in a child's learning development, as well as middle school. To have teachers moved out of these significant roles will not help the district in any way. To hear of another teacher who has proven themselves leaving to go to another district because of the current situation is a travesty. To many of the caring teachers that sit behind today or that stand in the hallway, know that you are not standing alone. Parents are also standing with you, whether we are graduates or current graduates or recurring to enroll. Yes, testing does play a role in the district, but reading at 6th grade level is not the same as reading as a kindergarten level. There are different ways of learning and different ways of helping children. It needs to be looked at in every way, shape, and form. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Dr. Mindy McCormick.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to bring to light some concerns of which the board may not be fully aware. I'm going to speak to 2 direct points tonight. The first is communication. Over the last year and a half, through the challenges presented by the global pandemic, the number one concern that has been raised by the community over and over again in these very meetings has been lack of communication. As parents, we were told that a district-wide system was being implemented, which would streamline communication and decrease the amount of time it took to receive that information. I can tell you from personal experience that if this system has been implemented, it is not working properly, or information that should be communicated is not being communicated. From my personal experience, I would venture to say that the district simply purchased stock in Facebook and is leaving it to the Exeter community page to communicate by parents, possibly other parents in the district. As the parent of a student at Lorraine Elementary, I'm extremely disappointed and frustrated with the lack of communication about what is happening in that building. We have had children in the district for 9 years and have never seen the amount of turnover, chaos, and turmoil that we have experienced in the last year. There are a number of instances of lack of communication regarding back to school night, losing the principal 2 weeks prior to school, finding out that there will be an interim principal in place one day before back to school night happened, then finding out back to school night was simply going to be meeting with your teacher. I should not find out by attending my other child's back to school night that the school counselor had been moved and that there were other specials that were being replaced at the school. I understand that the beginning of the school year was very chaotic for many reasons, but this does not alleviate stress and anxiety returning to the school year. Unfortunately, this seemed to be an indication of the lack of communication that would be prevalent throughout the school year. It is beyond discouraging to read on social media that the superintendent of the district was acting as principal and working out of the Lorraine Elementary building for 3 weeks. There was no notice provided to parents that Ms. Devlin, the interim principal, would no longer be acting as principal, let alone that the duties had been taken over by the superintendent. We also know from firsthand experience that she was not the only person filling in and that there were others who served as principal and building leadership. There were 2 specific incidents involving our own son and his safety, which should have been addressed by a principal that was not, but simply left up to the teacher to contact us. This is completely unacceptable. They should not be. We appreciate the way the teacher handled it, but it should have never been her responsibility to begin with. Lack of communication results in idle conversation, which often starts by side conversations had between 1 or 2 people in the know with those who are not. This then snowballs into rumors that become the prevalent and prominent voice of what is happening within the district. These rumors have truly tarnished the reputation of this district in the community. A private Facebook page does not mean that communication is not being discussed in other districts throughout the county. Our reputation precedes us, and we need to be mindful of the reason and what our current reputation is. This brings me to the second point, and I know I'm almost out of time, but I wish to make tonight, and that is leadership, or lack thereof, of part administration. The lack of communication ultimately falls to leadership. The clear fact that the current situation at Lorraine Elementary involving Mrs. Firestone is a reflection of leadership. It is concerning that the interim principal selected by the superintendent did not bring concerns to the superintendent, but apparently an anonymous letter brought that concern. There is a quote by Colin Powell
Thank you very
regarding
much,
leadership
Dr. McCormick, for your
that says,
Dr. McCormick. I'm sorry.
leadership is solving
Your time
problems.
is up, Dr.
And the
McCormick.
day your shoulders stop bringing you, that
Dr.
is the day
McCormick.
that you have stopped leading.
Your time is
And
up.
I
Thank
ask
you
that
very
keep
much.
that into consideration.
Alexis Evans.
Just real quick before I start, do I have to state my address?
Yes, please.
Okay, just making sure because I'll be the first one doing that tonight. Hello, my name is Alexis Evans and I live at 105 Diane Lane. My daughter began 7th grade at Exeter Junior High this year. However, her time here at Exeter started back in May of 2014 when we attended the pre-K visit at Lorraine Elementary. You see, my daughter has autism and at the time was undiagnosed. When we arrived at Lorraine that day, she was extremely upset, scared, and anxious, like most kids can be, but she was unable to use her words to express her feelings. Instead, she kicked, screamed, flailed her arms, and refused to let go of us. That day in May, we were greeted outside by none other than Mrs. Mary Firestone. Mrs. Firestone took my daughter from my arms, put her head down on her shoulder, and began talking to her about Lightning McQueen. Ka-chow. She immediately felt safe, began to calm down, and went off with Mrs. Firestone and the rest of the soon-to-be kinders without hesitation. Thankfully, in August, we found out Mrs. Firestone would be her kindergarten teacher. She was so excited for her first day, remembering Mrs. Firestone and her love for all things Disney. No tears were in sight. Throughout her kindergarten year and every year since, Mrs. Firestone has been a bright light in our lives, from providing a warm, loving, and exciting kindergarten experience to attending our daughter's 11th quarantined birthday drive-by parade in March of 2020, to my children and I snuggled up on the couch watching Teddy Tuesday and Wally Wednesday on Mrs. Firestone's YouTube channel during quarantine. It is because of her and teachers like her that our children have succeeded. They enter school feeling loved and supported, celebrated, and that they can achieve greatness. Mrs. Firestone has always gone to infinity and beyond for the students and staff of the district, standing up and speaking out when needed and helping in every possible way she could. It is time that we as parents do the same for her and all of the incredible teachers in Exeter. We teach our kids, if you see something, say something. It's time we do the same. We see you, Exeter teachers, and even though you may feel as though you are being silenced, we hear you loud and clear. Our teachers deserve a safe work environment free of intimidation, where they are respected by their superiors. They should be able to bring their concerns to their superiors and the school board without fear and without retaliation. I am asking the board to not sit back and allow the dictatorship that is happening within the district to continue to ruin the mental health, the morale of our school staff members, as well as our community. We are lucky to have the kind, wonderful, long-tenured teachers that we have here in Exeter, and I would hate to continue to lose them due to this bullying behavior. Please do whatever possible to get Mrs. Firestone back where she belongs with her kinders, and if a motion can be made so that the school board have to approve internal transfers like they do new hires, medical leaves, resignations, etc., please make the motion. As Cinderella said, just because it's what's done doesn't mean it's what should be done. I appreciate your time and consideration to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Gardella.
Ted Gardella, 218 Pennsylvania Avenue. That is a tough act to follow. So far at the last two board meetings, I've publicly identified perceived deficiencies in your performance as a Board of Education and provided solution-based suggestions for improvement. The response has been obtuse and defensive, so I'll provide more specific information and try to connect it to your roles and responsibilities as board members. On your most important role of directing the administration to provide programming focused on improving academic achievement, your response to my comments last meeting was limited to allowing the superintendent to present her views on early literacy instruction without any critical questions from you. No questions about the mathematics proficiency improvement strategies or the high school graduation rate improvement strategies. Since tonight is a voting meeting, and since the comprehensive plan is due in November, this community may have to assume that you will simply submit the plan without the integration of any public comment and not require any evidence that the strategies to be implemented will work. After all, you'd already funded the literacy materials requested even before approving the plan that implements them, and approved the creation of a new position to support the career internship strategy without any presentation of how these credits will integrate with the current graduation requirements. You have a responsibility to approve the comprehensive plan, and yet there's no vote to be taken on this agenda on the latest version of the plan that was presented only 2 weeks ago. You also have a responsibility to protect our high school students from the establishment of a two-tier system of graduation requirements. One for students on track to meet the graduation requirements that have been established, and another lower tier for students who, in someone's estimation, cannot meet them. Former President George W. Bush defined this as the soft bigotry of low expectations. On board transparency, to date, the board and administration has resisted all requests for transparency on the activities of and materials produced by the Equity and Excellence in Exeter Committee. All the meeting minutes have been removed from the district website. The Google documented resources referenced in multiple copies of the minutes have never been released to the public. It would be a very simple matter for this board to pass a motion directing the administration to restore these minutes to the website and provide the Google document of instructional resources for the public to review. It is easy to understand why House Bill 1332 has been proposed. The desire for transparency on curriculum and instruction is currently strong and growing across the state. It would also be appropriate for you to pass a motion to require that any future meetings of this committee or community group or whatever label you determine can protect you from transparency, it be open to the public. Anyone in this community should be able to attend and participate. With respect to all board committees, which by policy 005 and 006 shall be open to the public and shall publish agendas in advance and minutes thereafter, there's very little evidence that standing board committees are following these policies. The last available committee meeting minutes on the website and on board docs are from October 2020, and there are no meeting agendas posted for the committees that report regularly to the board, even though your own policy states that these committees shall operate in accordance with the Sunshine Act. On fiscal responsibility, one of the most critical roles for any Board of Education, you've approved timelines without giving any direction for budget growth. Based on past performance, it seems likely that you will again require the community to shoulder increased property taxes. On accountability, the superintendent has established goals of 100% proficiency in reading, mathematics, and graduation rate. And yet with a single presentation at the last meeting regarding 4 new initiatives with no explicit connections to achieving these goals, you are set at this voting meeting to provide approval for moving forward on these 4 initiatives. You have a responsibility to provide this community with evidence that these programs will have some impact on your stated goals. You have a responsibility to demonstrate how these programs will be sustainably funded without increasing the overall budget. Approving these initiatives may provide you with a feel-good moment, but you have a responsibility to require that these initiatives will help the district make progress towards the district goals and not increase the overall budget. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gardella. Jill Glennon. Did they hear me say Jill Glennon?
Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay. My name is Jill Glennon. I live at 339 Gibraltar Road. I have 3 kids currently in the school district. 2 are at Lorraine Elementary and 1 is at Reichton. I am here tonight to discuss my concern and confusion with recent events in the district. I'd like to speak specifically about a recent situation at Lorraine Elementary and Reichton that provides an example of several perplexing decisions being made by the district leadership. The 6th grade has 11 large homerooms. My son's homeroom has 28 students in his. I got a call on October 8th from Dr. Freeze that my son will have a new teacher because they are adding a 12th 6th grade class because of large class sizes. I was told my son's new teacher would be a kindergarten teacher from Lorraine Elementary. On October 13th, I got another call from Dr. Freeze that my son is going back to his original homeroom instead of being with a substitute. Halfway through the day, he went back to his original classroom, and we have yet to hear if they will be splitting again. And they only split his classroom. They did not take some from each class. They split his classroom in half, 14 and 14. After the second call, I began hearing that the interim principal at Lorraine had been replaced, and Dr. Miner has been the acting principal for the last 3 weeks. This was never brought up to me from the district. There are several points I would like to emphasize and with respect to this situation. Number 1, if class overcrowding was really such a problem, it would seem that the problem should have been apparent before the school year started and should have been handled then instead of mid-fall. Number 2, from an outsider's standpoint, I find it hard to believe that the best way to solve this problem was to take someone who has been a great kindergarten teacher for well over a decade and move her to 6th grade against her will, as evidenced by the fact that she didn't show up till 6th grade that day. And I know that for a fact because my son never saw her. Thus disrupting 2 classrooms rather than 1, and not even allowing the kindergarten teacher and the class an opportunity to say goodbye and have closure. I find the explanations I've heard for how this situation was handled to be very puzzling at best. If Lorraine Elementary had such big problems that the interim principal, this is number 3, had to be replaced and the superintendent was made acting principal for several weeks, this is certainly something that should have been communicated to the parents. It was not, and the fact that it was not seems to indicate that the district is operating in a less than transparent fashion, which is not acceptable for a public institution. Also, it is unacceptable that the kindergarten parents whose children's teacher was reassigned were not directly contacted by the acting principal. Instead, they received a robocall and a letter in the mail. They deserve the same respect as the 6th grade parents by at least having a conversation with the administration in charge of their school. The situation at Lorraine is just one example of questionable decisions that have been made in the district recently. There are others, especially relating to COVID, contact tracing, quarantining, asynchronous learning, etc. I'm not going to get into them all, but I would like to say the most important function and the number one priority of the district must be the student's education. If others are being placed ahead of education in order of importance, the district needs a serious reevaluation of its priorities. We also need to treat the teachers with respect and let them know they are not replaceable. As you can see, we have no substitutes, and the teachers are leaving the district to go elsewhere.
Mrs.
The
Glennon,
district needs
thank
to
you
start
very
paying
much.
attention. Thank you.
Carrie McCarty.
Hello, all. My name is Carrie McCarty, 3902 Penns Drive. Dr. Miner, all I want to say is that you remind me of the principal from the movie Matilda, also known as Mrs. Trenchbold. I called you and spoke to you when you laid off 90 employees. I was asked to give you a chance. So far, I'm not impressed. The stories I hear from many people that all have matched the stories within one or two words has brought me to this conclusion. I comment on Facebook, and several people message me asking if you or your secretary has reached out asking for a meeting. I respond, oh, I wish they would. But no one has reached out, so I'm going to share my thoughts with you today. Dr. Miner, if you have to question the taxpayers about your leadership skills, you lack leadership. I have always been taught to be a leader and not a follower, but never treat those you are leading less than myself. A leader is confident, not intimidating. Thank you for your time.
Raydell Hyman.
Hi, this will be short and sweet. My name is Raydell Hyman, 356 Gibraltar Road. I'm here tonight for a very personal reason. We have had 3 children who passed through the Exeter School District. Collectively, it's been about 19 years. Never in these 19 years has a decision affected our family like this. Our newest child started kindergarten at Lorraine in September. First, let me give you a little background. Leo was removed from his biological parents around a year old and put in foster care. He was there for about 2 years where he formed a strong bond with his foster parent. Then he was taken from her care and brought to us to adopt, where he's been working to bond with our family. In September, he started kindergarten with Mrs. Firestone, and of course began bonding with her right away because of how caring she is. So now imagine last Monday night getting a robocall that not only is he getting a new teacher after almost 2 months in school, but that she won't even be there to say goodbye on Tuesday. That was heartbreaking. Then imagine Leo and his 19 classmates walking in on Tuesday to see the classroom empty of the things that have surrounded them since the beginning of school. I understand that children are resilient, and I'm sure in time the kids will get over it. But if you understand anything about trauma and development, you understand that we might worry that there could be long-term effects for Leo and maybe other classmates. I don't profess to understand the ins and outs of staffing a school district, but I do know that the communication within our school that I have loved for so long has been dismal at best. Many parents, including myself, feel like we haven't known what's been going on at any given time. This needs to get better. Your decisions at a leadership level, whether based on facts and data or retaliation, affect my kids and all of our kids. As a parent, I am begging you to do better.
All right, that ends the public comment portion of the evening.
Dr. Miner's contract, she can be asked to left the room and a pole can be strewn, have her abilities removed. For the time being, until further investigation is have.
Okay. Okay.
Excuse me,
Moving on.
I just have a couple of questions related to the comment. So I believe a couple of months ago, we talked about an app that would be integrated into our overall communication efforts. Is that in place?
So Mrs. Breton talked about an app, it's called Parent Square, that would be used to streamline communication in the district and ensure that all communication came from a single source. She has been coordinating with the technology department in terms of integrating our existing system with the Parent Square app. I know Mr. Way is in the closet right now running the technology. But my understanding is that that integration was more difficult from a technology perspective than Ms. Breton or the technology department had hoped. I believe that that is completely been resolved at this point, and Ms. Breton intends to offer training to our teachers at the November 2nd in-service. She'll be then presenting on Parent Square, how it's used, putting out a video for parents in terms of how to use that, add it to their phones, etc., on the day following that meeting. So that's the committee of the whole meeting on November 9th. So it will be launched on November 10th. That's correct. So part of the comprehensive planning process in Pennsylvania is the comprehensive plan has to be put on display for 28 days, and the law actually specifies the location where it needs to be displayed at the main office of each of the school buildings as well as in the local community library. We've also made it available electronically on our website, and anyone is free to contact the district with comments regarding the comprehensive plan. At that point, Dr. Flam would review the comments, make any recommendations in terms of changes to the board, share the feedback, and then that will be brought for a board vote. Dr. Flam, I believe that's at the voting meeting that's on the 16th. Is that when that's scheduled for the comprehensive plan vote? November 16th. And so then the board at that point would be asked to vote to approve the comprehensive plan on November 16th.
So then based on that timeline, the comprehensive plan is in those locations now?
That is correct.
Okay, just a sort of an element. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows that. Is there any sort of effort to let people know that it is out there? Is it prominent on our website? Have we pushed it on Facebook? Have we even sent a message home just to let people know?
I'll let Dr. Flam speak to that as he's been in charge of the comprehensive plan project.
Mr. Dupina, I hand-delivered the comprehensive plan to each of the buildings to be placed in the main office as well as to the public library the day after the last board meeting. Ms. Breton also posted the comprehensive plan on the website prominently. And regarding a message sent to parents or the community, I don't know if that message was sent, but I certainly can ask Ms. Breeden to do so.
Dr. Flam, I believe that in Ms. Breeton's summary of that board meeting, she included a link, and that went out to all families.
Thank you. Yes, it was in that summary.
So again, I will just say, I mean, sometimes when something's contained within everything else, it's probably difficult to find it. I mean, when we do things, we sort of try to point red arrows at it, and not only do we post it, but we also sort of advise people as to what it is, and maybe the things that they should be looking for, the questions that they're asking. I'm just wondering if there's a possibility to just bring more attention to it. I mean, I think that it's important to, if we're gonna have this discussion around curriculum, I think all of us need to try to get up to a level where we more clearly understand it. And I'm a hospital administrator. I'm not a professional educator. So I think that anything that we can do to assist us in learning more, I think would just, it would help.
I'm sure that Dr. Flam would be happy to coordinate with Ms. Breton, our communications specialist, on re-advertising its availability.
Okay, moving on. If there is no objection, we will adopt a motion to approve meeting minutes from last month's school board meetings, the special board voting meeting, September 7th, 2021, the board committee of the whole meeting, September 7th, 2021, and the board voting meeting, September 21st, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Oh, we didn't need a second. We said there's no objection. So it is approved. All right. If there is no objection, we will adopt a motion to approve the September 2021 Treasurer's Report and payment request dated September 22nd, 2021 through October 19th, 2021. Hearing no objections, this motion is approved. Moving on to our Education Committee, Mr. Fiddler.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. My understanding is that there's no board action required on A and B. Is that correct? The enrollment report and the field trips? That's correct.
Correct.
Okay. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. And before I make a motion, are there any fellow board members who wish to be heard on the consent agenda?
Mr. Fiddler, can you separate number 1 through 4 and read them individually for votes?
Sure thing. So we'll take from 5 through 12.
Okay, there's a motion for 5 through 11. Is there a second? Did you say 5 through? Yeah. Oh, there is a 12. Okay, 5 through 12.
5 through 12, I think that's
Okay.
what I said.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can I just get an explanation on item 10, please? The contract to provide in-person or virtual remedial reading instruction services.
Yes. So Title I is a federally administered grant program that provides funding to school districts. As part of that Title I funding, we're obligated to, on a per pupil basis, provide the same services to non-public schools. And the most effective and efficient way to do that is to do it through the intermediate unit, since there's a number of non-public schools. That's the way the vast majority, I believe, of school districts operate with the non-public, since the intermediate units serve them as well. So this is something that the board has approved every year, and the cost represented there is, in fact, the granted money from the Title I program that the non-public schools are entitled to. So it's actually their money. It's not an additional cost to the district. Yes, you're welcome.
All right, so we'll now move to the. I'm sorry.
We have to vote first. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I beg your pardon. So let's move now to the first 4 items, which include the providing buses or vans for activities, creating a Barnes & Noble style coffee bar in the senior high school library, establishing a K-6 robotics club, and beginning the process to create a playground on district property specifically designed to allow special needs children to have full access along with every other child in our community. So I would move the passage of those 4 items.
Second.
Just a quick question. Have we approved any of these funds through the ECEF?
So each of these, the number 1, the providing buses and or vans after school for students participating in club sports, academic tutoring, and during the day transportation for internship programs, that would be funded through the ESSER grant. We've allocated funds within that. The Barnes & Style coffee bar in the senior high school library, ultimately that would be self-funding. So we would seek grant funding for the initial startup. You know, that could be a grant through ECF. It could be a grant through other providers. It could be that we have the supplies that we need actually within the district at this point. So it's really, we're asking the board to simply say that they support us pursuing the potential funding for starting that up. And again, that would be for our special needs students at the high school to have basically in-house job training, running that, selling it, and then having it be self-sustaining. So the only thing that we're asking the board for at this point is philosophically to say that they would support doing that. If we would need district funds, if we were unable to secure a grant or the materials, then we would come back and have a separate request to the board in order to do that. This in item 3, the K-6 robotics, again, it would be something that we would initially look for, a private donor or grant fund to get the first Lego League materials, but then we would look to the board to provide an advisor for that through the co-curricular. So again, we would come back to the board if we were able to secure funding for those first Lego League materials. If we weren't, and there's an interest beyond that, then we would either look for other funding sources or again come back to the board with a separate request to do that. And then finally, in terms of creating an inclusive playground, that commitment, on the part of the board, again, at this point, is simply to say we would entertain the idea of having such a playground. Ultimately, the board would have to commit some portion of our property in order to do that. We have a lot of acreage over at Awatin. There's acreage near Rifton. And then, maintenance, that sort of thing. But again, it's an undertaking where we would seek a single private donor. There's grant monies, different things along those lines in terms of funding that. But if the board isn't interested in having something like that on their property, then we wouldn't want to go out and pursue that with donors.
I guess there's not really a necessarily need for the ECF at this point.
No, none of them require that, but in the presentation among the possible partners for each of the different things. I listed ECF, I listed the township, there's state grants, etc. So none of them require that, but we're always, of course, happy to partner with ECF on anything that they would like to partner with us on. But in terms of what we're asking the board, is simply, is the board okay with us actually asking anybody to sponsor that? Because if the board isn't, then obviously it wouldn't be appropriate to ask for someone to sponsor any of those.
Gotcha. Just want to clarify that there's no pressure on them to.
Absolutely zero.
Okay.
It's simply, you can't retrofit that if you go out and ask private donors for money and then come back to the board and say, we have all this money, and the board has no interest in doing that. That's far more problematic than the board saying, we give you approval to go out and seek funding for these things if you're able to do so.
Okay. Just want to clarify. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'd like to note that, I mean, conceptually, I like the ideas, but I'm still not clear on the fundraising. I'm a little uncomfortable with the process, only because the ECEF has really been sort of it is the foundation arm for the Exeter School District, and it's not entirely clear to me how that process is going to work. And I think that when in fundraising, there are two big problems that you run into. One is you don't ask for enough money, and the other one is that you ask too frequently. And I would just like to better understand what the ECEF and the 30 some odd board members or whoever is out there that has been working in the community and being supported by even people in this room, to just kind of have a clearer sense of how we're going to proceed on that.
So again, Mr. Chapina, number one has nothing to do with private funding, so perhaps that would be something that you would want to take separately. The remainder, ECF, said give us suggestions, ideas, and if the board doesn't want to do these things just because they involve the board's property, all we're asking for the school board to just say, yes, theoretically, we support those ideas. And then we would then take it to the ECF board, we would take it to the township, whomever else might be interested. And if there is no interest and we require the funding and aren't able to obtain it, we're not asking the board to commit to any of those ideas. I would say number one is really a necessity, a need to have. And again, that's funded through ESSER, and that's why I've tied that one specifically to funding that the district already has, because we really have a need to have our students who want to participate in sports, extracurriculars, and don't have transportation to do so. 2, 3, and 4 are really enrichment, enhancement opportunities. They are not necessities by any stretch. And so if the school board isn't interested in pursuing those at this time, I would certainly understand that. But again, I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that, because you are the governing body of the district, to ask you first before I would seek private funding from ECF or any other potential funding stream, because I think it would be problematic to not do it in that order.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm one person. I'd like to dot my I's and cross my T's with the ECEF, but that's just me.
Although I feel these ideas are amazing and wanted by myself and our community, I also believe that it's important for us to focus on our needs, not our wants right now. These ideas have not come with guaranteed outside financial support, and without that guarantee, I'm not comfortable supporting them. With the expense of the new bus barn and most recently the baseball field backstop, I'm again not comfortable moving forward on something like this. I feel our focus needs to continue with us getting through this pandemic, especially when we talk about using ESSER funds, that in my opinion need to be focused on our kids, such as maybe those that are having difficulty getting through quarantining and finding themselves struggling to keep up with their grades. Thank you.
Can I add a comment? When you say using the ESSER funds, there is a set aside that must be used for after-school programs. It's about $36,000, and that's what number one is for. It cannot be used for anything else. So that's just...
Again, I would just like to clarify, in 2, 3, and 4, we are not asking the board to obligate any funds whatsoever. We're just simply saying if there's no interest, then we don't want to spend time and investment in seeking doing these things. But if there is interest, I think having our special needs students and having a coffee bar is something that a lot of high schools have. And I think the high school students really enjoy that. I think the students who work in it have an opportunity to engage with their peers. Same thing with Robotics Club. We don't really have a lot of K-6 offerings here, especially academic-oriented offerings. Most of the things that students can do are community, private things. And then, of course, the biggest reach one is the potential for a special needs playground. We have a lot of students who just aren't able to access that. I've heard a lot from the community since I've been here about the lack of opportunities for families in Exeter to do things together. There's not a bowling alley. There, that's really something that is lacking. And so by having, and then of course, then, there was a playground down on our property. There were pavilions. That has all gone away. If we were going to do something to really offer up the school district as more of an opportunity for families to be together, I think taking that opportunity to also design it with students with special needs and parents with special needs in mind would be really critical. I certainly respect and understand your perspective, Dr. Herring. I would say that the coffee bar setup is really simple. I mean, it's some coffee pots and special ed is already working through the Bridges program, to have students do other sorts of things. So that's very simple. The robotics is very simple. I don't think it takes our eyes off the ball, and I think, in fact, it supports our academic goals by engaging students more. In fact, I'm pretty certain that the board has talked on a number of occasions about the more our students are engaged in activities and clubs, the more academically successful they are. So I think those two things, are very easily accomplished and supportive of our goals. And again, the final one, that playground, is really, again, it's a much bigger goal, but I do think, and maybe it's not now, but at some point, I think the district needs to partner with the community in that acknowledgement that families need a place to go where parents can be with their children, be with other community members, engage, have fun. It really is lacking for whatever reason within the confines of Exeter. And I think post-pandemic, all of these things for the district to be a partner in a place where families can get together with one another, and have safe, healthy, outdoor fun, and have that be something that, students who have special needs or parents who have special needs can access, which they can't currently do with our existing playgrounds, I think is a worthy goal. And again, I don't think it takes away, from any of our other goals. But I think, to your point exactly, Dr. Fearing, is why I wanted to bring this and ask the board first instead of just deciding that we were going to do this, because it is your role as the governing body to decide whether or not you have an interest in something like that. And if you don't, I certainly respect that.
With the extracurricular bus, so that the ESER fund would only fund one school year for that?
And no, so what Mr. Fike was referring to is there is state pass-through money that they have allotted specific percentages to. So in year one, we would be using the allocation that's specifically for after-school programs. As I said, we're not allowed to use it for anything else. The totality of the ESSER grants go, I think we can use them all the way through 2024. And so if we wanted to use other portions of those grants to continue that for tutoring, other things, we could certainly do that. But ultimately, down the line, the district would have to decide once those grants ran out if it was something that was really useful and the district wanted to continue to fund and put it into our budget. So this is an opportunity. And again, it's something that, since I came here, I heard that students who didn't have the ability to walk home, who didn't have the ability to take the bus, were really not able to participate in clubs, sports, etc., as well as students who needed extra help after school from a teacher or, having a tutoring program. That not having transportation was really a barrier for many families who needed it the most. So this grant kind of gives us the opportunity to, without impacting the budget, without impacting the taxpayer, and because it's mandatory to use this one portion, to really get a sense of what works the best. Is it vans? Is it a single bus? Is it multiple buses? Is it just one day? Do K-6 students really not take advantage of it? So that at any point when we would come back and say, okay, this is actually something we want to put into the budget, we would be able to present the board with data about utilization and recommendations for the most efficient ways and the types of programs and who is utilizing the service and not utilizing it. So it's a nice opportunity to use grant funds to trial run something that, frankly, until you offer it, you don't really know how many people will take advantage of it.
I guess my only struggle comes in when the grants no longer cover it, not knowing how much it would cost the district, not knowing even a roundabout what that would cost the district. So if we went into it saying this is just a trial, this isn't permanent, my worry, because I do know we need this, there's no question about that in my mind. But my worry is if we give it to the community or provide it for the community and then come back to the board and the board says we can't afford this anymore, what that would then do to our kids who depended on it for so long. So I guess that's where I struggle in my head about the whole thing, because we do need it, there's no doubt, but is that something that the school can maintain ultimately? Or are we doing a disservice?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, I think having a practice or an activity bus, many districts provide that. I think that that's not an uncommon thing. We certainly already have the buses, we already have the vans, so we wouldn't be making any kind of investment in terms of that. The investment is, in the hourly wage of drivers. And so I think part of what we hope to do with this is to really be able to come back to the board and say, this is how it makes the most financial sense to only run it on certain days or only run it on certain times. And if at some point, and we're talking at this point after 2024, we think it provides a critical and vital service for our students to be able to participate. Right now, I mean, it's a very unfair system. If you have a parent who buys you a car, you get to stay and play a sport. If you have a parent who doesn't work and can pick you up, you get to stay and play a sport. If you live close enough to the school and walk, you can. That's very, I think, inherently unfair of us to say, if your parents are wealthy enough to have a car or to come pick you up, you get to do Exeter activities, and if you don't, you don't. And so I would say that it would be the responsibility of the administration to find cost offsets other places to make that happen for kids, because I just don't think we should be offering programs that are exclusionary to families that can afford to provide their own transportation or have their kids walk. I just fundamentally don't think that that's right. And so it would be our responsibility to figure out how we could offset those costs, for the board if that's what the board wanted us to do.
Mrs. Wilson, I just wondered, is it possible to vote on these 4 items separately? I know we've already kind of made a motion and seconded, but I think we may feel differently about each one of these to some degree. And for instance, I think item number 1 is really critical and essential particularly for kids who need academic, tutoring or involved in an internship program. So, to me, it kind of brings Exeter up to a standard that we see in most other school districts who can provide these after-school, opportunities. And the others seem to be more, like long-term thinking kind of things, particularly the playground, which is something that would take time and possibly years to establish. So I feel more comfortable we could vote on it separately.
So I would ask Mr. Fiddler if he's in agreement with that, he can withdraw his motion and then make a new motion.
Sure, I'll be glad to. So I withdraw the motion and recommend that the Board of School Directors approve the following item: provide buses and/or vans after school for students to participate in a variety of activities.
Second. Excuse me. First. Can I just ask a question? I still think we need more investigation. I'm not comfortable voting no on this till I know more. So I don't want to. I'd like to see where ECEF is. I'd like to understand just sort of.
On item number 1?
No, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, okay. I don't think we voted on 1 yet.
Okay, but what I'm saying is I'd like to have actually 2, 3, and 4 taken off for future consideration versus a no vote now. Because I don't, you can tell me.
Could we finish number 1 and then we'll talk about 2, 3, 4? Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Any discussion about number 1?
I just want to reiterate what I had said last week and kind of mimics what Dr. Miner had said, is that I believe wholeheartedly that some students are not academic smart students. They're not, maybe interested in school. They don't like school, but they connect to people in a different way. That may be an after-school sport, it may be a club, it may be that they need tutoring. And I firmly believe that giving them this opportunity to have a way home and to be able to participate in these activities will only help them throughout their academic career. So I do support this. In addition, for people who aren't from Exeter, about 20 years ago we had this, so it's nothing new. It was just something that was taken away. And I would also encourage anyone that is not familiar with the items that we're talking about here, 1 through 4, that they watch Dr. Miner's presentation from the workshop meeting 2 weeks ago, because it was a very good presentation that gave much more background into this than what we're discussing right now.
I'd like to say something too. As a graduate of Exeter, we were a one-car family, and without the activity bus after school, I would not have been on cross country, I would not have been in the class play, I would not have been in Key Club, I would not have been in student council, and whatever else I did in high school to stay out of trouble. So I think Dr. Hamburger, you said that other schools have this. Well, we had it too 50 years ago. It was unthinkable that we wouldn't have an activity bus. It was just part of the day. So I hope we pass it.
I agree with that as well. I think the one thing that we got to understand about ESSER funds is it's a use it or lose it type of situation. So we better use the money and take advantage of it when we have the chance to do it. And this would be for a program of such. When I went to high school, I was in a marching band and a couple other things. And if it wasn't for that bus, I wouldn't have been, anywhere. But it took me home at night. So that's something I think is very crucial for some of these kids to maybe start participating in more activities. So I think it's very, very, very important.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Well, I was going to go to number 2, but I
Yes.
know Mr. Japina had offered the thought of perhaps postponing these. So I don't know what, would that require a motion?
If what you would do, first of all, it's Mr. Fiddler's committee group, so he's the chair. If there was a motion made, you would have to make a motion to table. You'd have to have a second to table that, and there's no discussion. It's just a vote. If it's tabled, then we don't talk about 2 through 4. Right.
Okay. And would I make that motion? Or
I think Mr. Japina would, since it's his.
Well, we'd bring that up some other time.
Hmm?
We'd be able to bring that motions 2, 3, and 4 some other time at a meeting.
You can, yes. Or the alternative is you can go through each one individually and vote on that if Mr. Japina doesn't make that motion to table.
I would like to make a motion to table items 2 through 4 for future discussion.
The only one that I think that might be something that I think
We can't have
no
a discussion
on we need, if there's first we have to decide if there's a second. If there's no second, then the motion doesn't move forward.
I'll second that motion.
And now you have to vote on it.
Okay, now we have to vote. There's no discussion. All in favor of tabling number 2, 3, and 4, say aye.
Aye.
Should we do a roll call? Or did
I don't know. Did we get that?
Okay, roll call. Hunter Aarons, not here. John Fiddler,
Here, or aye?
Or-
Yep,
and this is to table. Okay.
aye.
Dr. Ann Herring,
No.
Dr. David Hemberger,
No.
Michael Japina,
Yes.
Anthony Chowdhury,
Yes.
Barry Miller,
Yes.
Michelle Stratton,
No.
Allison Wilson.
No.
4-4, motion does not carry.
So it's
now
up
we're
to the,
back to the
yes.
individual items. All right. It's recommended the Board of School Directors approve item number 2, creating a Barnes & Noble style coffee bar in the senior high school library.
I'll second it.
So
Any discussion?
Sorry.
Any discussion?
So this will not go over the 5,000 estimate.
No. Frankly, I would be surprised if it even got to that estimate. I mean, I think the cost of it, you know, we certainly could start out very small, and as they made profits, they could grow it. Mrs. Harris, I wonder if you want to make any comments about it, since you oversee the special education program, in terms of, you know, how this might be utilized by students and things that you've seen in other places.
I appreciate you asking, Dr. Miner. So I have seen this done in other places. I've been a part of implementing this in other places. I was very appreciative when Dr. Miner made this suggestion as one of her wingspan projects. Essentially, it provides students who have special needs an opportunity to work on their transition goals in their IEPs, and it gives them very important opportunities to develop job and employment related skills, as well as communication skills, social skills, and adaptive living skills. So it's really a wonderful way to be able to provide that natural environment teaching for students with special needs, and then for them to be able to transition those skills that they learn into real life job experiences after they graduate.
Mrs. Harris, into Dr. Hearing's question about the costs, I would say it's really as minimal as a coffee pot to a cappuccino maker to whatever. So, I mean, really the expenses can vary from $30 to however fancy we want to make it. It could certainly be something over time, so that if it's something that it, you know, Grant wanted to pick up, we could do a more expansive project, and we could start as small as a coffee pot and styrofoam cups and build it from there. Is that correct?
You are absolutely correct. And particularly in the implementation that I was involved with this, we couldn't stop the community from donating supplies for the students to be able to be successful with this. And having been here for a little while now in Exeter, I have every assurance that that will be the case here as well.
Me too.
I just have a comment. I agree that this is part of our special education program. I mean, this is something that I think is really critical. All of our kids have transition plans, and integrated in those plans are specific activities to help facilitate some of these goals for developing career awareness, and in this case, I think not only just learning about how to transact in a business sense, but also allowing these kids to reach out to their non-disabled peers in the community to have a way to relate. I mean, this is a really, I think, creative and useful tool. So and there's almost no cost associated with it. So to me, I'm not sure why it's coming to the board, but I certainly
simply because we'll be selling something. You know what I mean? There'll be hot coffee. It's just, again, I wouldn't want to just open a business in the school and not ask the governance committee to say that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a terrific idea, and I think it's just very necessary. So I appreciate you bringing it to us.
As someone who's worked with people with special needs for over 20 years, I am honestly appalled that we would even think of voting no to this. It's very sad to me. I think what you said there is very important, Dr. Hamburger, is that this is a chance for them to reach out, to be a part of, to be connected to the people that don't have special needs, that don't understand them. For those people to meet them, to understand them, to get to know them. They're not just hidden in a classroom. They're part of the school environment. I feel like that is critical and is well worth $5,000. I would pay way more than this personally to have this opportunity for these children. I also worked at a school in Indiana where I was in the life skills classroom, the most amazing teacher probably I've ever met. and she implemented this exact same thing for her students. They went, I don't know exactly how this will be, but they had a coffee cart and they walked around and they sold it. They actually sold the coffee to the staff, not to the students. But it was amazing. These kids took ownership of this project. They loved it. It was theirs. It made them feel good about themselves. And again, $5,000 is nothing for the opportunities and the gifts that we're going to be giving to these students. So I am a yes.
Can I again, you know, you know, it's a tough sell. I get it. I don't know how it's being funded. I don't know how. I mean, I think I'm sort of belaboring the point.
Yeah. I would say, you know, listen, like Ms. Javina, to address that concern, again, because it could be started with as little as, you know, a $30, you know, purchase of a coffee maker. If ECF or if somebody else wants to write a check or grant it, you know, we can certainly do more. And if not, I think it's the kind of thing, to Dr. Hemberger's point, that it would be negligible in the school district budget to get it up and going. So, you know, I understand this is, you know, of all of the programs, I think this is truly one where if there's no interest in funding or no availability, it's such a small amount that it's not something that we would have to ask the board's permission for. And if somebody says, oh my gosh, we'd like to make this spectacular and wants to fund it, you know, we would love to partner with them in doing it. So on number 2 in particular, I think it's just the scale of it rather than, you know, some styrofoam cups and some donated coffee.
If this doesn't get approved, I will donate the styrofoam cups and the coffee machine.
Thank you, Mrs. Stratton.
I have absolutely no problem. I had support for all of the things that were on there. That was even in the committee as a whole. We just, like I said, the main concern is, are we going to have a structural budget for these things? And that was the issue.
Yeah, and this one again, I think it will be self-funding.
This was self-funded. I don't have a problem with that at all. And so that's kind of why I was kind of hesitant when we first started at Folklore, because I think definitely 1 and 2 should be, no doubt, yes. 3 and 4 we'll talk about, but other than that, I think we're fine with the Barnes and Noble. I'd like to get coffee from there if I could myself. You know, I like Starbucks myself. You know, all right. Thank you.
Okay, then we will vote for number 2. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Okay, number 3, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the following item. Item number 3, establish a K-6 robotics club that prepares students for the future through a suite of inclusive, team-based robotics structured after-school programs.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I see this says after-school program. Is there a way to use ESSER funds to fund this as well?
That's a good question. I would have to do a little more research about that, because the way that First Lego is set up, it's like a competition, and you're basically the costs associated with it are the actual like enrollment in the competition itself. You know, the purchase of the materials. So it's a little more outside of the box. I don't know, Mr. Fike, if you have a thought about the rules around ESSER grants for that one.
Possibly ESSER 3, not the state ARP ESSER set aside. That's strictly tutoring and work related. But possibly ESSER 3, but I'm not. We'd have to review it with the state.
Is there a way, like, I think that's one of the things I was thinking about tabling because of that reason. Maybe we should just do some more investigation on that before we go and pursue it with, you know, getting outside grants and other things like that.
I've been in districts that had the Lego programs or the robotics. It's usually easy to find the sponsor, you know, someone like Ashley or Boscov or something like that, because they love to see their name on the competitions. What your expense would be the counselor or whatever it's called,
the activity sponsor.
Activity sponsor.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my I'm sorry. In my excitement over this program last week, we may have answered these questions. So, is there an approximate cost, and is there a fee for families? Because I definitely see the benefit in this. I mean, learning about science and math. For some kids, that's not exciting, and if you can get them excited in something in a different way, I feel like that's fantastic. But I have those two questions, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of having an activity sponsor, that would be a district employee. One of the things with First Lego, I don't know if you remember, there was like a video, and again, as you referenced, if people are more interested, they can watch the recording from the committee of the whole meeting. But those corporations, they actually have like employees that volunteer and they help and mentor and that sort of thing. But we would need a school district employee to actually be the coach, oversee it. The way that process works is because that's not in the co-curricular contract already. There's a group of ETA leadership and a board member that come together and they say, well, this is what that would cost, in terms of how many days a week would it be, how many students, that sort of thing. So it's kind of impossible to estimate until that committee gets together. But we could compare it to the cost of other clubs that the district sponsors. What does it cost to have the person who, Dr. Flam help me with a club that has a sponsor that would be something similar, like an academic club at the junior senior high student council, right? So it would be something comparable to that. So that would be the cost that the board would be looking into. And then again, to Mr. Fike's point, because it's a competition and you get to sponsor it and you get to have your name on the shirts and things like that, I think actually buying the materials, that wouldn't be a problem. And the registration fee, I think, is a couple $100. Again, it's negligible, but there would be no cost to families. I mean, part of our goal here is, again, how can we offer more to our students, more to our families in terms of after-school opportunities, in terms of having different types of opportunities. I think someone said about, not having the coffee, not having the activity bus, not having something like a robotics program or First Lego League that starts at the elementary. I think that, I think we all would like to see Exeter be considered a top-tier school district in all regards. We're all very proud of our cross-country team. I think not having academic clubs and opportunities for the youth of Exeter is a problem. And so, we would want to make it as accessible to all families as possible. And like other clubs, there's an activity fee, that you can have waived, but it's inclusive of all of those clubs. So it wouldn't have a separate fee.
I think what you said that really connected with me there was, comparing it to the high school. The high school has all these clubs, and there's nothing at Rifton or the elementary schools. And those kids really deserve the same opportunities or the chance to be involved and excited about something. I know at Rifton, I don't remember what it was called, the block that we had that was taken away. This is not that this will appeal to everyone, but this sounds like something that may interest those kids, that may get them involved with their peers, getting to know them, outside of the school day. I was at an APT meeting and somebody said, what's fun at Rifton anymore? It's all learning, which is really why we go to school, as a reminder. However, this is something fun for our kids. And I'm an occupational therapy assistant. And one of the things that I do when I work is I try really hard to teach kids and have them learn, but they don't realize that they're learning, they're having fun. And this sounds like it accomplishes that.
That is the goal, Mrs. Stratton. And I think, as over time, that, like, for instance, this year, the librarians are going to start doing reading Olympics. In the past, we've had something that was just internal, and they're, and that's an external competition, and it engages Exeter with other schools. We've had it at the junior high school. In fact, we were, several of us were at the junior high school today, and the librarian there very proudly showed that we have the banner for Reading Olympics for the county, and Exeter has won the last 2 years, and, she intends to win for the next decade. And I think, again, we have proven ourselves to be very competitive athletically, and that is outstanding. I would like to see our kids who aren't athletes get to have that experience of competition and pride and some things that are not competitive. I just think, again, it's very challenging for families to find things for their kids to do that are productive and engaging after school. I think towards our goals of 100% graduation and all these academics, the more students feel tied to the schools and have different opportunities to be successful, I think the better. So first Lego, I think is a nice, like, Legos are broadly appealing to kids, but over time, I would like to see us expand more and more opportunities to our younger students so that they learn that being a part of Exeter isn't just coming to school for the learning, that it's doing things after school so that by the time they get to the junior high and the senior high, that's what they're used to doing, and they fully take advantage of all of our clubs and our sports and our music program. I think it's important to start to get kids thinking about Exeter in that way at an early age, and we really don't have anything to speak of in that regard.
Okay.
Can I just, again, how's it being funded again? I'm not clear on that.
So at this point, what we're just asking the board is that they would be willing to have us enter into conversations with ETEA regarding what the cost of the sponsor would be. And so then ETEA, the union, right? Because it would be co-curricular sponsorship, right? So that would be a cost to the district, like other clubs that are added. So what that cost would be for the sponsor or sponsors if we had it at multiple schools and didn't transport students. So that would be step one. And then the registration fee and the actual materials, again, to Mr. Fike's point, you can go directly to any number of companies who will sponsor it. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's a few $100s for the materials, or the materials, again, they come in at under an amount that we would need board approval for because it's just a few $100s, or if ECF wanted to funnel a sponsorship through them, we would certainly welcome the partnership, but the actual materials cost is not a high dollar item. It would be having the co-curricular, which would, again, is why we would need board approval, because if the board isn't interested in, typically, for instance, there was a student who talked at the committee of the whole meeting about debate club. The way that those clubs have run is if they can kind of work independently at first, then the board approves them. And you can do that with high school clubs where kids can kind of do that on their own. You can't do that K to 6. So the board would need to say, yeah, we would be willing to pay, one of our teachers to stay after school and do this. And if the board is not, then I don't want to go out to anybody and ask for the materials costs because we wouldn't have anybody to run it.
Again, I would be totally supportive of that if I knew the ECF was engaged ahead of time. That's all I'm saying. And it disappoints me. I'd like to know if I could abstain on that vote till we hear from ECF, because I don't feel like I have enough confirmation that there's support or this would be funded. Could I ask
Yes.
Sharon to tell me if I could abstain on the vote for that
You're
purpose?
certainly permitted to abstain. Yes.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
And finally, it is recommended the Board of Directors approve following item number 4, begin the process to create a playground on district property specifically designed to allow special needs children to have full access along with every other child in our community.
My understanding here as well is that if we would not have the funding for any of these projects, they would not move forward. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. It is, again, just simply saying, is the board even interested in entertaining using our land in this way? Because as the superintendent, I don't have the authority to go out and talk to the township about what the permits would look like or anything else unless the board has said you may, engage, because it involves real estate, contractors, other sorts of things. So in the event either the board says we're not interested, then obviously I wouldn't pursue any of those things. If the board says, yes, we would be interested, then Mr. Fike and I, would engage the township. What would the permit costs look like? We, would engage companies that provide this. What would the cost per item of equipment be? And then once we had that kind of dollar figure, we could, at that point, look at private funding for it. But at no point will we expend district funds if we didn't have another funding source. So this is simply, again, to just say, you in fact could talk to the township. We could, because this falls under that facilities real estate thing that a board would have to, give permission to Mr. Fike and I in order to do. It's not within our regular authority to do that.
Yeah, I made the motion.
You know I'm going to talk. I just want to say that I'll second it and then I'll talk. I'm sorry. Second. Am I good now? Sorry. I just want to say that I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with you beginning the process on this item. I think that there is no doubt in my mind, again, that every person in this community deserves to feel part of it, appreciated, comfortable, and I would love nothing more than for that to happen in Exeter, especially in these times where lots of people are forgetting that. We are all human. We all want to be loved. We all want to be together. So I would love this for our children, and I would love it for the parents that come that have typical children, and their children get to see and experience those kids, and then those parents who maybe aren't connecting with other parents have the opportunity to connect with those other parents and also feel part of this community and not feel different, because nobody enjoys feeling different.
So I agree with everything Michelle said. I just would, again, prefer that we honor the volunteers who contribute their time to raise funds on behalf of the district through ECEF, and that they're an engaged partner in the project. That's all. And I will be
We would certainly love them to be an engaged partner on this project. We think that they've been an engaged partner in so many of the things that we have done here in the school district, and something as high profile as this, we would love to have them. We would also love to work with the township. I mean, I think one of our goals as a district really has to be to connect with all of the elements of our community that, historically we haven't always been able to successfully do that. And I think this playground being about allowing all children and all parents to access that simple joy of playing on a merry-go-round, or not a real merry-go-round, but those types of things, swings, etc. That's a wonderful opportunity to model and engage a whole bunch of partners in. But again, step one is the board even willing to allow Mr. Fike and I to entertain the idea? We can't ask any other group to support us if the board wouldn't grant us the permission to do that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Mrs. Wilson, before we move on to the next item, can we maybe get some information about item number 1 that's on here? It's the field trip. I'm just curious. It says we're visiting a couple different businesses in the area, and I'd like to learn more about that. Yeah, it's because it didn't need to be voted on. It kind of got overlooked. Sorry, it's like hidden there at the top.
It's like number 12. It's like they are hidden.
Yes, I can speak to this, although Mr. Campbell can probably speak more elaborately on it.
I didn't see Mr. Campbell lurking back there. Come on up, Mr. Campbell.
Our students have participated in this in the past, and it's a continuation of that program through the Berks Business Education Coalition. Mr. Campbell?
There was a bit of a lag there, so I don't know if I missed something. I think you're
Could
just
you
looking
just
for a
speak to
summary
the
of the DVC trips.
Yes, I think that Mrs. Stratton wanted to know more about those trips.
Sure. Yes, we have done those for a number of through the Berks Business Education Coalition. The goal is to get ninth graders out to take a look at work that goes on in a lot of manufacturing, but also other types of businesses in Berks County, all part of our college and career readiness standards and our efforts to try to get kids thinking about their post-secondary, their goals. And it ties in nicely with the continuation of what we just did this week with our trip over to the BCTC. Saul Lausch is the one who coordinates that and works closely with the businesses around the county to get as many districts out as possible. We were very fortunate this year to be selected because a lot of businesses are not opening themselves up entirely yet, so the numbers are limited. So I'm very appreciative of what he's been able to do to get Exeter there. So we do want to get all of our ninth graders there to really bring that experience to them, and then that gets followed up with some of the Chapter 339 activities that get done as we get kids ready for college and career readiness through that program. Okay.
All right, so now we're ready to move on to the Personnel Committee, Mr. Japina.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. It's recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following personnel items. Number 1, resignations. Number 2, retirements. Number 3, appointments. Number 4, change of status. Number 5, leaves of absence. And items 6 through 9.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, moving into Finance, Facilities, and Audit Committee, Mr. Ahrens is not here tonight. Dr. Hemberger, I believe you're also on that
Sure.
committee.
It's recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the following finance, facilities, and audit items, items 1 and 2.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, Policy Committee, Dr. Hemberger.
It's recommended the Board of School Directors approve the following item, policy 903 for second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And I just asked Dr. Hemberger to just explain the changes to the policy.
Okay, and I'll defer to Mrs. Harrison if I'm not able to clearly articulate the changes. But primarily, we wanted to split the comment section into 2 portions. One, a comment section as it normally is in the very beginning of the board voting meeting, and then and also a public comment section at the very end. The initial public comment would be specifically to items on the agenda, and then the final public comment would be items that are not on the agenda but would be related to, you know, the district issues and important issues for the school district. So those are the 2 primary changes. Also a clarification that the total number of minutes devoted to public comment would still be 30 minutes, split, however it shows up, but the total number of minutes for public comment would be, including both the first and second comment periods, would be 30 minutes.
A piece, right? 30 minutes a piece each period.
No,
right?
no, 30 minutes total for both the first and the second. So you combine the 2.
Is that the committee as a whole too as well? So both meetings in particular? For
No, the Committee of the Whole just has it at the end.
it just happens at the end, but only.
Yeah, it would just be the voting meeting. And I believe, Dr. Hemberger, that just as is the case now, the board could always vote to extend that 30 minutes to an additional 30, et cetera. That wouldn't
Yeah.
At either the first set or the second set, any board member can make that motion, or the president can make the motion to add an additional 30 minutes or however the board sees fit.
Exactly, and we've done that in the past, and I think we would continue that practice.
Dr. Hemberger, did you mention that over here? Did you? That's the second time that's happened to me lately. Did you mention that if an additional agenda item is added, that there's also an opportunity to add public comment about that? That's also an addition to the policy.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yep.
So just in approving this, it's not final, right? We go through one more reading, or this?
No, this is it.
This is second. This is second.
Okay.
Policy can always be changed in the future, but this makes this puts this policy in place, and it's effective immediately after the board approves.
So this will be for the November
Yes,
voting meeting. Okay, gotcha.
until the board changes the policy again.
Yeah, which
If they decide.
So again, I'll just ask, sort of theoretically or conceptually, does this, theoretically, encourage public comment and engagement? I mean, I would like to have, the opportunity to talk to people. I mean, people want to know, more. I'd like it not to be contentious. I'd like not to contribute to that contentiousness. I would love to see the temperatures toned down, but I just want to make sure that we're trying to find a way to do that. I mean, I will hold myself accountable for the things that I've done. I also, would hope that we all, figure this out. But I don't know how we're going to get. I don't know how we're going to get better at it if we don't find ways to talk and interact. And I think that, if I've seen anything, look, I'll have different perspectives. I don't know how to. I've been on the board for 8 years, maybe on for 2 more, but how do we do that? How do we, I don't know, does this do that? Does this give us, I don't want to, 2 things. I don't want to fear somebody coming to the microphone, and I don't want somebody to be afraid to come to the microphone either. And, I don't, I don't know if this does that.
Mr. Japan, can I just give you my thoughts on it? I don't know whether it has any effect on participation in public comment. It does help to clarify what the public comment would be related to. So, and it helps, I think, for us as recognizing we're conducting business here, to kind of get through that business and then allow a comment period that's a little bit more open-ended, I think, and allow people to kind of speak to items that aren't necessarily on the agenda. So it does offer, I think, so people know that you don't necessarily have to address an item on the agenda, but you do in the beginning. The other thing too is I think other districts do this. This isn't an uncommon setup. Even though this wasn't the PSBA sample policy that we have here in place, we've added this measure because we, I think, as a board, had conversations about this and felt that it would be helpful and our board meetings would be more effective if we had an extended public comment opportunity, for topics that were not necessarily specific to items on the agenda.
No, I actually think that second part came from a discussion in public in terms of offering opportunity to talk about non-agenda items. Okay.
I also feel, Mr. Japina, I know everybody sits there and then, when it's over, it's just over. And I think maybe they would like to have an opportunity to speak about something that came up during the meeting, and they could say, how they feel about it. So I do think it does give them, 2 opportunities to speak.
Yeah, just in this meeting alone, there were some people saying that there's not a lack of communication. I think this is important to not only have it at the front, but at the back end, to say, what, this is the result of what we voted on. Now you can comment afterwards on how they feel about that, and I think that's even more and more communication than that can be a part of this whole thing. So I support it. I think it's something that there's been multiple complaints of dialogue. That's not having enough dialogue. Well, you got plenty of opportunity to first at the front and the back end. So go for it.
Mrs. Wilson, my other question is in terms of actual practice. I mean, when people sign up, would there be sort of like a checklist on either side of whether it's an item on the agenda or not, so that we would be able to kind of, separate? Do you see that? That's not in the policy, but I think in terms of how.
Yeah, I think we'll have to organize it that way so that when they fill out the form, they can decide which comment period would be most appropriate. Or both, really. I mean.
Yeah, is there a provision on that where somebody can talk twice? Can I go like in the first session?
There is a provision in our policy that you can speak twice if everyone else has had an opportunity to speak.
Right, and you can also speak twice, according to how it's written, you can speak twice on 2 different topics. But again, the only restriction is that it's board agenda voting items
board related
on the first round, and then the second round, the same individual could speak again on a different topic. Technically, you could speak on the same topic again, so long as other members who wanted to speak had an opportunity to.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
I'd just like to reiterate too. I mean, policies again are changeable. So if we decide to vote on this today, which I hope we do, we can always look at it again in the future, and if there are any problems with the implementation of this and it needs to be enhanced in some way, the policy committee can make some additional recommendations and we can subject it to additional modification.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Athletics and extracurricular activities, Dr. Herring.
Thank you. Sorry. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the changes and additions to the extracurricular salary positions per the attached memo.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I'd just like to share that the high school boys and girls cross country competed tonight at 4 o'clock at Kutztown University in the Bciu championship races, in which the boys won the county title. High school girls soccer is playing tonight in the Bciu semifinals at 7 o'clock versus Wilson. The high school boys soccer is playing tonight in the Bciu semifinals at 7 o'clock versus Tulpehocken. The winners will advance to the championship games on Thursday night. Girls volleyball will be playing the Bciu playoffs on Thursday night at a site to be determined. Band, cheerleading, and football senior night is this Friday, October 22nd, starting at 6:15. Also, please get your tickets for Clue, Exeter High School's fall play. It is no mystery that you will have a great time at this whodunit production. Shows are this Thursday and Saturday at 7 o'clock. Hope to see you there. And that's it. Thank you.
Mrs. Wilson, I know we're past the discussion, but may I ask a question about this, what we just approved? Is that allowed? Yes? Okay. So I'm curious. So what we just approved here in regards to advisors and things for these co-curricular activities, is that essentially the same as what we were looking to give you permission to go ahead with? Okay, so we had no discussion on that, but we had lots of discussion about the robotics for K through 6. Is that correct? Essentially.
Well,
No.
No, not exactly. So what happened in terms of the vote regarding the recommended action for the co-curricular additions is that committee that I referenced that is made up of ETEA, the Teachers Association. There's a board representative, Mrs. Wilson, on it, and they they recommend what the positions are, the rate, that sort of thing, and then they're added. So that had all previously happened, and then the board was asked to approve it. What I was asking for was for permission to engage in that conversation with them about what the rates would be, and then should that happen, then that this would come back to the board then for a vote to approve that as an addition.
So it would come back to approve it in the manner that we just approved this, or not?
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our committee reports. Mr. Miller, Exeter Community Education Foundation.
Thank you, Allison. ECEF is pleased to share that our EITC donation season has begun. We've received 2 donations thus far, $2,500 from Mortgage America and $1,000 from Tompkins Vist Bank. We're excited to hear the ideas the district has to spend these EITC donations. That's it.
Thank you very much.
And I'd just like to reiterate that I would love for ECEF to come to a meeting for the community members to learn more about what it is that they do.
Thank you. Moving on, Mr. Fiddler, Berks Career Technology Center.
I have nothing beyond what you've already received from, I guess, Donna and from BCTC.
Did you get your meal?
Yes. Yes. They're quite good. Yeah, good cooks.
Okay, moving on to BCIU, Board of Directors, Dr. Hamburger.
BCIU has a meeting this coming Thursday evening. Nothing to report from prior meeting. That's all for my report.
Legislative liaison.
Yeah, I do want to kind of follow up on some of Dr. Miner's comments. We did have an advocacy day, and I think there were over 100 meetings with legislators that were planned. These were all Zoom meetings for the most part, from what I understand. And we were lucky enough to have 3 of our legislators in the county represented. It'd be great if we had all, I think 5 of them who represent our school district, but you know, that never seems to really happen. You know, some of the things we really wanted to talk with these folks, you know, one of the reasons we really try to develop this is to develop connections with our legislators, so they understand what's happening in our school district, what's specifically happening here in Exeter, and then they really also are familiar with some of the main concerns that we have as school boards, as I think expressed through PSBA. And there are like three areas that we really concentrated on this year. One was you know, the whole idea of charter school funding, which is, you've heard me speak about many times, which is a real problem here in Pennsylvania, and really needs, I think, dramatic overhaul and reform. And so, you know, part of what we were doing was really trying to explain, how does this impact on our school district, Exeter? You know, what are the additional costs? How is this, you know, affecting us on a financial basis? And what, you know, and how is this impacting on taxpayers? The other thing was that we focused on was mandate relief. You know, we know that Pennsylvania goes over and beyond what it really needs to do in terms of the mandates that are required for public schools, and it really falls, a lot of that burden falls on our administrative team. So, you know, the whole concept of mandate relief is sort of scaling back those mandates that are viewed as excessive, and relieving some of our district administration and personnel from some of the tedium of having to pursue some of these mandates that are really not working out in the best interests of, let's say, our kids, and divert our energies away from the real purpose of why we're here. I think the other thing that Dr. Miner talked about, I think very eloquently on the call, was our staffing concerns, and how difficult it is with transportation, with getting with substitute teachers, with even filling positions, and sort of the chronic problem we've had with teacher preparation and getting sufficient, you know, students to kind of select public education and enhance our availability of potential candidates for employment. And that's a real concern that our legislators need to know about, and anything that they can do to help us with that would be really valued. So, all productive conversations. You know, I think we were especially happy to see and have direct conversations with Mark Rossi and Mr. Gillen, and I think, and having, Senator Schwank's office represented there too was really, I think, really powerful for us, and we really appreciated their involvement. So that's all for my report on the legislative liaisons.
Okay, thank you very much for doing that, Dr. Hemberger. Okay, Township Borough Liaison, Mr. Ahrens is not here. Does anybody have anything from the Township that he shared? No? Okay. I just want to share before we end, and I open up to any board members, that the board met in executive session prior to the meeting tonight to discuss legal and personnel matters. And now I'd like to open it up if any board member would like to be heard.
I just want to thank the community for coming out tonight and just say that even if you did not speak, we heard you. I also want to say we heard it several times tonight. I also love and appreciate all of our Exeter staff and teachers, as I think all of the board does. So thank you for all that they do.
And thank you to the Lorraine teachers who came tonight and some who are still here. Thank you.
Mrs. Wilson, I just wanted to say this for the township because I got a email from Jack Philo. He just wanted to say that their fall festival, we had Exeter High School students volunteering, and they were great. So he did want to pass that on.
Thank you. That's great.
I just want to say the election's coming up in November the 2nd. Good luck to all the candidates. Good luck with dealing with all these things on the board, and I wish everyone the best of that they get the support that they need. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Just that's a good reminder too that next month our committee of the whole meeting will not be held on Tuesday, November 2nd because of the election, and instead we will be holding the committee of the whole meeting on Tuesday, November 9th, and then our voting meeting will be Tuesday, November 16th.
May I raise one thing? I know that a number of us got this email today, and I'd like to get it into the record. I forgot to do it during public comment. I don't know if I can read the email with somebody who wanted to come, couldn't attend, and I don't know what the process is, but I did say that I would get it into the record in some way. I'd like to read it if I could, but it's from a Mrs. Christy Durham, and it is related to issues around quarantine.
I believe you guys had a discussion previously about reading emails not during the public meeting, and I think you said your practice was not to do that. Certainly,
okay, well,
certainly
then
if there's a public comment that can be forwarded. So
okay, I want to apologize to Mrs. Durham then, and if I can get this to whoever it needs to get to, can it be put in the minutes, or
can you share it with the board?
I think we all got it.
Mr. Japina, when we all received it, I assume last night, I actually sent a message to her and asked her if she had already reached out to Mr. Campbell and Dr. Minor, and she had not. And I'd asked her if I could forward that, and she said yes. I've already forwarded it. To the best of my knowledge, they've already been in contact with her. So I believe they're working on resolving any concerns she may have.
Okay.
If I could just have a quick question here. In regards to if we do have the extracurricular busing, will the school building stay open until the buses come to pick up the kids? Because sometimes the buildings do shut down.
Till the buses come to pick up
the kids to take them home after.
So that the kids wouldn't be standing outside alone
Correct.
waiting for the bus.
Correct.
Yeah, right. So we would, whatever advisors, would be responsible for making sure that children got onto the school bus. Yes, they would not be standing alone. You're welcome.
And also, can we get an update in regards to the quarantining that is happening at the schools? Are we getting a lot of kids that are quarantining? Are we finding it happening in particular buildings?
I would defer to Mrs. Harris. She manages the quarantines for the district.
So I can give you an actual count. I would just have to pull up my spreadsheet and do that counting, so I can forward that to you, what the current counts are in each of the buildings for the number of quarantines. Interestingly, we only had one positive case. I don't know if you're watching the dashboard, but last week we only had one positive case reported to the district. So obviously quarantines have been a little bit lower as well. We're still seeing household quarantines and based on household positives. So family members, a parent being testing positive, and then students quarantining around that. Now we have had a couple of positives reported already this week, so I imagine there'll be a few more quarantines around those. But I can give you some numbers per building current.
And what's the average time of quarantine? Or is that hard to answer?
No, that's not hard to answer. So it depends on the type of quarantine. So if it's a household positive and they're not able to isolate in any way, that quarantine is a 20-day quarantine per DOH, and they have the opportunity to come back after day 17 if they test. And then if it's any other type of exposure that's not a household exposure and they are able to be isolated then from that person, that's a 10-day quarantine and the opportunity to come back after day 7 with a test.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, if there's no objection, I will adjourn this meeting. Hearing no objection, this meeting is adjourned.